When her enemies promised to spare her children's lives if she surrendered, she lifted her skirts, pointed to her pubic area and shouted, "I have enough here to make more children." Even today, that's a jaw-dropping act of defiance. Now imagine what people thought back in the 15th century, when women were expected to be quiet, obedient wives and mothers, not warriors who stood up to powerful men. Perhaps that's exactly why her contemporaries gave this woman, who rose from being an illegitimate daughter to becoming the Borgias' fiercest opponent, the nickname the Tigress. If her name isn't familiar to you yet, after today's video, I promise you'll never forget Caterina Sforza. So hit the like button and let's dive in. Our heroine's life is, in many ways, a perfect reflection of the Renaissance itself. It was an era that could be described as magnificent and enlightened, yet at the same time filthy, ruthless, and unforgiving. Nothing captures that contradiction better than the fact that Caterina was born out of wedlock, something that was completely ordinary among the Italian aristocracy of the time. Even popes, including the infamous Borgia himself, fathered several illegitimate children, despite supposedly living lives of celibacy. So when Galazzo Maria Sforza, Duke of Milan, had an illegitimate daughter in 1463, hardly anyone found it surprising. What really was remarkable, even by the standards of that era, was the education she received. Yes, by the 15th century, people were finally beginning to accept the idea that girls could be educated just like boys, and were capable of much more than sewing and bearing children. Alongside a humanist education, Caterina was also trained in the art of war. She became one of the very few women of her time who would one day wear armour and command armies. But Caterina's childhood came to an end very quickly. At just 10 years old, her first marriage was arranged, and the details of it are still shocking even today. As I've mentioned before, marriages at such a young age were normal back then because they were meant to strengthen political alliances. In most cases, however, the couple wouldn't actually begin living together as husband and wife until the bride was older. But Caterina's husband had no intention of waiting. In fact, he had originally been engaged to Caterina's 11-year-old cousin, but her family broke off the engagement because of his impatience. As a result, 10-year-old Caterina took her cousin's place. From that point on, historians disagree. Some believe that Girolamo Riario, the Pope's nephew and Caterina's husband, didn't wait at all, while others argue that the marriage wasn't consummated until she was 14. Either way, by the age of 25, the couple already had 6 children. At first glance, it might seem that Caterina was destined to live the comfortable life of a typical Renaissance noblewoman, filling her days with courtly pleasures and raising her family. But she was far too ambitious and too gifted to be satisfied with the role of wife and mother alone. Before long, she became actively involved in the administration of Imola and Forlì, the cities her husband had received from the Pope. She held audiences, listened to petitioners, and confidently took part in governing, involving herself in matters that few women of her time would ever have been allowed to touch. But the death of Pope Sixtus IV turned everything upside down for Caterina's family. I probably don't need to explain why being related to the Pope was one of the greatest political advantages anyone could have at the time. Every powerful family fought to place one of their own on the papal throne and keep him there for as long as possible. The struggle for that position was filled with intrigue, scandals, betrayals, and, of course, the poisonings that Renaissance Italy became so famous for. So the moment the Pope died, his family's enemies saw the perfect opportunity to seize power and settle old scores. At the time, Caterina was 7 months pregnant, but when she realised that her husband's position was in danger and Rome was descending into chaos, she mounted her horse, rode to Castel Sant'Angelo, and seized the fortress. She then turned its cannons toward the Vatican, effectively taking control of the city. The terrified cardinals begged Caterina's husband to convince her to abandon the fortress so they could safely hold the conclave without fearing an artillery attack and elect a new pope. But Caterina refused, saying that because she was heavily pregnant, she couldn't leave. In the end, 8 cardinals came to the fortress themselves to negotiate with her. And just like that, for 12 remarkable days, this fearless woman held the fate of the Catholic Church in her hands. The newly elected Pope, Innocent VIII, clearly hadn't forgotten what Caterina and her family had done. The humiliation she had inflicted on the College of Cardinals was simply too great, and so was the influence her family had once enjoyed. He stripped them of the income they had received through the papacy, leaving Caterina's husband with only one obvious way to make up the loss: raising taxes in the cities he ruled. Now, let me ask you something. Do you enjoy paying higher taxes? Probably not. Well, neither did the people of Forli. Before long, a conspiracy was set in motion. Caterina's husband was assassinated, and once again she found herself behind the walls of a fortress, the only place that still offered any protection. This time, however, her children had been taken hostage by her enemies. And that's when Caterina did exactly what she had done in Rome. She turned the fortress cannons toward the city and made it clear that she wouldn't hesitate to use them if necessary. In response, her enemies threatened to kill her children unless she surrendered. According to the most famous version of the story, Caterina climbed onto the fortress walls, lifted her skirts, pointed to her pubic area, and shouted back, "Do it, if you want. Hang them in front of me. I have enough here to make more." Her enemies were left completely stunned, and in the end, they chose not to harm the children. Now, it's only fair to mention that this story may well have been embellished by later chroniclers and eyewitnesses. Personally, though, I love it. After something like that, it's hard to think of Caterina as merely another Renaissance noblewoman. And even if only part of the story is true, it tells you everything you need to know about just how fearless and extraordinary this woman really was. In the end, help arrived from Caterina's uncle. She defeated her enemies, reclaimed her city, and became its regent on behalf of her eldest son. Unlike her far less prudent husband, one of her first decisions was to abolish the taxes that had sparked the uprising in the first place. She also threw herself into strengthening the city's defences. By then, Caterina had learned an important lesson. Real power lay in stone walls and artillery. She also understood that her lands were far too valuable to remain unchallenged. Imola and Forli sat at the crossroads of some of the most important military routes in northern Italy, making them a prize that ambitious rulers would always try to seize. And, unfortunately for Caterina, she was right. When Rodrigo Borgia was elected pope, his son Cesare Borgia wasted no time launching his campaign to conquer Romagna, capturing city after city along the way. But Caterina refused to submit. Instead, she once again climbed onto the city walls and prepared to defend her people. The siege lasted for weeks. Time and again, the attackers launched assaults, and time and again, they were driven back. But in the end, numbers prevailed. In December 1499, Borgias' forces finally broke through the walls and captured the city. Caterina remained on the defensive until the very last moment, but the fortress was eventually stormed. She was taken prisoner and later paraded through Rome as one of Cesare Borgia's greatest trophies. Her imprisonment was harsh, but it didn't last long. Just a few months later, she was released, most likely because Cesare Borgia no longer saw her as a serious political threat. After all, she was a woman. Politically, however, her fight was over. Forli and Imola remained in Borgia hands, and Caterina's rule had come to an end. After her release, Caterina withdrew to Florence, where she devoted herself to one of her lifelong passions, alchemy. She even wrote a book of her own. Her manuscript, Experimenti, contains 454 recipes and formulas collected over the course of her life. Among them are remedies that claim to cure almost any illness, recipes for protecting the body from disease, poisons and antidotes, instructions for creating the philosopher's stone, and even a method for bringing the dead back to life. You see what I mean when I say that Caterina was an extraordinary woman. But no matter how hard she searched for the secret of immortality, the legendary Tigress of Forli died of pneumonia in Florence on May 28, 1509, at the age of just 47. Caterina Sforza was far more than just another woman of the Italian Renaissance. She is proof that truly exceptional individuals can rise above the limits of their own time and choose to live the life they want, rather than the one society or the church expects them to live. Caterina Sforza, the Tigress, whose roar has long fallen silent, yet whose voice can still be heard even today. Had you heard Caterina Sforza's story before? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.